Shalom Chaverim, today Parashat Vayetzeh, and we're going to do it together with Jean-Paul Sartre and Anti-Semite and Jew. So I'm going to start by reading a short paragraph, and then we'll talk. It has become evident that no external factor can induce anti-Semitism in the anti-Semite. Anti-Semitism is a free and total choice of oneself, a comprehensive attitude that one adopts not only toward Jews, but toward men in general, toward history and society. It is at one and the same time, a passion and a conception of the world. So, Jean-Paul Sartre, Anti-Semite and Jew. It's actually, the full title of it is An Exploration of the Etiology of Hate. And it was written in 1944 and published in 1946. Now, as the French people were celebrating the end of the war and the victory, and celebrating the victory of the Allies, the heroism of the resistance, one thing in the celebration was missing, and that is the recognition or the admittance, if you will, of the fact that about 80,000 Jews were deported from France, 11,000 of them children, and only maybe 3,000 of them survived. And this was something that really, really bothered Sartre. And he decided to confront this and to mention this. And really, it's one of the first books to confront anti-Semitism in Europe right after the war. And Claude Lanzmann, the director of probably the most important documentary film about the Holocaust called Shoah, said that after he read that book, it was the first time that he could walk out on the streets in France and feel like he could breathe. And so it was very important that this book was written. However, at the same time, it was also very controversial and subject to scrutiny. It was written very, very quickly by Sartre with very little research. So it showed a lot of ignorance of him, of, Judaism, Jewish culture. And so it was highly scrutinized, so much so that some even accused Sartre of being anti-Semite himself after reading this book. So we're going to get more into the why, but first let's talk about our portion. So our portion today is Vayetzeh, and Vayetzeh really deals with the protagonist of the parasha is Jacob. And it begins when Jacob flees for his life. Basically, his brother is about to murder him after stealing the blessing, and all of that. He's encouraged by his mother, Rebecca, to run away. And he reaches a clearing and puts a rock under his head and falls asleep. And then he has a very famous dream known as Jacob's dream. Let me read the psukim for that dream. ויחלום, והנה סולם מוצב ארצה וראשו מגיע השמיימה, והנה מלאכי אלוהים עולים ויורדים בו. He had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and messengers of God were going up and down on it. Here in the JPS translation, it's messengers of God, angels really is another translation. והנה אדוני ניצב עליו ויאמר אני אדוני אלוהי אברהם אביך ואלוהי יצחק הארץ אשר אתה שוכב עליה לך אתננה ולזרעך. And standing beside him was Adonai, who said, I am Adonai, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are laying I will assign to you and to your offspring. והיה זרעך כעפר הארץ ופרצת ימה וקדמה וצפונה ונגבה ונברחו בך כל משפחות האדמה ובזרעך. Your descendants shall be as dust of the earth. You shall spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Now, if you're watching this video, reading this column, you have some interest in Torah. And as people who have some interest in Torah, you probably came across at least one interpretation of Jacob's dream who's going in some direction. And there's really so many of them. And to name some examples, it could symbolize earthness and spirituality. It can symbolize a higher and lower moral ground, right? Most of the Hasidic interpretation of it are how we can, go down in our Vayetzeh or go up. All of that, it symbolizes halacha and agadah. So basically, the practicality and then the essence, transcendence and immanence. There are so many interpretations for those angels going up and down. And today I wanted to try and bring a different interpretation, really seeing this descent and ascent of the angels as the fate of the Jewish people as a whole. And I came today with that idea, and then my friend and colleague Rabbi Zach Golden, really told me about this Gemara that really does that. Basically looking at the angels going up and down as the fortune or misfortune of nations. So I'll get to the English here. So it says descending up and down, these are the guardian angels of the nations of the world. And so of Media, of Greece, of Edom, says the Gemara. And really the story here goes that since it is the fortune of nations, Jacob is afraid of ascending that ladder, fearing the descent. And God promises him, if you go up, you will sit by me, you will sit by my side. But Jacob doesn't believe it. And afraid in that descent, he never ascends. And it kind of like ties into the misfortune of the Jewish people, which is what we're talking about today. Let's first, before we talk about the Jewish people, look at Jacob's life. We are called after Jacob. The second name for Jacob is Israel. We are the people of Israel. We are descended from Jacob, and his life, well, really his entire story, and especially in our portion, is all about those ups and downs. If you think about it, he starts in that being the favorite son of his mother, being really safe and sound in his household, have everything that he wants, only to really find himself descending to such a low moral ground of deceit and of cruelty towards his brother that he finds himself homeless and wandering, and then dependent on a deceitful person that he works for 20 years, and then only to then run away. But not just run away after being again blessed with all of these children, 13 children, with knowledge, with cattle, with all of that. And if you think about it, this is really the 2,000 years of recent 2,000 years of our history as scattered among the nations. We have seen periods of golden ages, of prosperity, of ascension, and of course dark descent constantly. And who put it better than Henry Ford, who is an anti-Semitic early 20s essay, which is called The International Jew. So Ford wrote this: "The Jew is the world's enigma, poor in his masses, yet controls the world's finances. Scattered abroad without country or government, he yet presents a unity of race continuity which no other people has achieved. Living under legal disabilities in almost every land, he has become the power behind many a throne." And these words of this great anti-Semite are not without merit. And they're not without merit because, yes, as a nation, we indeed managed to not only survive severe persecutions time and time again, but we also managed to prosper and thrive and tremendously contribute to the society that we we're in. And so we continuously ascend and descend. And in his book, Sartre describes the anti-Semite, his anti-Semite, as a middle-class person who really faces uncertainty, that feels like that there's a problem with their future prospects. And this is not news. We all know that anti-Semitism usually blossoms in times of uncertainty. And maybe perhaps it is because even when we ascend and descend, there's something for the anti-Semite that is always certain. And that is the existence of that peculiar minority that might be the cause for the disruption. And that is the Jew. And Sartre writes in this book, and this is, I promise we'll get to the controversy, but this is really the line here that caused it. He wrote, in effect, we have just seen that contrary to a widespread opinion, it is not the Jewish character that provokes anti-Semitism, but rather that is the anti-Semite who creates the Jew. So this is Sartre's theory here, is that basically Jews would not have existence without anti-Semitism, that anti-Semitism is what created us and formed us and made us who we are. Now, look, yes, some of it is, you know, the old joke about why are Jews great violinists is because a cello is too heavy to carry when you have to run away. So yes, some of our traits are due to anti-Semitism. So that is definitely true. However, Sartre ignores here rich tradition, scholarship, and knowledge, and practice, and culture, right? That Jews have developed regardless of anti-Semitism and maintained because of its richness and its beauty. He also ignored the fact that actually that culture and tradition and knowledge always were the strongest and really blossomed when Jews were safe, and not the other way around. So that is why there are so many scholars who find this book problematic. However, the continuation of this paragraph is actually important, because he writes, the primary phenomenon, therefore, is anti-Semitism, a regressive social force and a conception deriving from the pre-logical world. And I think that here he does have a point. And to explain it, I'm gonna ask for the help of Slavoj Zizek. And Zizek basically says, as soon as you begin a discussion with an anti-Semite about whether some anti-Semitic tropes are true or not, you're selling your soul to the devil. And what do you mean by that? If somebody tells you, oh, Jews control finances, or Jews are strong in Hollywood, or Jews, right, all of these things, once you start to get into the details, yes, some of it is indeed true, of course, you know, but what Zizek is saying is that that any of those facts obviously can be true, but anti-Semitism, and this is a quote for him, is formally a priori wrong. And he's saying the question shouldn't be whether Jews have too much money or influence, but rather why the Nazi universe needed the figure of the Jew to maintain its identity. So it's about something else. And what is so fascinating to me is that, first of all, recently, many of us have been feeling that we are unfortunately on the descent, that perhaps several decades of security and prosperity and pride are starting to shake a little bit, and we might be finding ourselves in the opposite direction. And what's interesting about Sartre and Zizek, both of them are non-Jewish. And they're occupied with Jewish hatred as a phenomenon in a way of understanding society as a whole. And maybe, just maybe, the purpose of us ascending and descending in this world is to move forward this very important understanding. Shabbat shalom.